Okay, here we go. Go! Oh, 60, wow. Oh my God. Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol. Although for the purposes of this video, I'm going to revert to my name given to me by Tiffany Dell when I filmed with Love Cars earlier on in the year, Lecky Peddy, because yes, today we are going full EV with the Porsche Taycan Turbo, a car I've waited to drive for quite some time. Many of the EVs I've driven were really not performance-oriented cars. They were normal cars that had been electrified or cars that were from the ground up basically designed as an electric car. This for me is different. This is arguably one of the first performance-oriented pure EVs from a performance-oriented brand, Porsche. It is built from the ground up to be a performance EV, and well, we'll get to the performance part later, but safe to say it does that really, really well. But there's plenty to talk about with this car, involving the technology in it, the performance, where it sits in the market, its price and its looks. So let's start off with the looks, because typically today I only have the car for one day and it's decided to rain, so I'm just going to have to get wet. So I want to stay outside for as little time as possible. But let's talk about the looks from the rear three-quarter view. Now, there's no doubt it's a handsome looking car, but for me it's better looking from the front than it is from the rear. I love the front lights and just generally the nose on the car. When it's behind you in the rear view mirror, I think it looks stunning. The rear view isn't bad. I just think for me Porsche missed a trick, because I think the best looking Porsche you can buy is the Panamera Sport Turismo. I just think that car is absolutely gorgeous, and a fast EV wagon would have been incredible. Now, I'm sure there's maybe some thinking behind why it was a saloon to do with things like aerodynamics and aero efficiency. And it's not that I don't like it, but I just think a sport wagon version of this car would be incredible. And I'm sure there will probably be one at some point, bearing in mind EV is the way we're going. It's very, very slick from the outside. In terms of practicality, it may well be a saloon, but it does have two boots, because remember, we don't have an engine, we've got motors. So we've got a really big capacity boot at the back, 366 litres of boot space at the back, and then a very kind of 911-esque boot or frunk at the front of the car, which is just 61 litres. So you've got plenty of storage that makes the car really practical. In terms of passenger comfort and rear passenger legroom, let's just quickly jump in the back and give that one a test. Now, it's pretty dark in here. Get my foot stuck underneath the driver's seat. It is pretty dark in here. There's no sunroof or panoramic roof, but I have to say there's loads of room. This seat is set for me. I'm a 6'3" driver with very long legs, and that is set for me, and I actually have sufficient leg room. And even though the roofline is pretty sloping, I've actually got a reasonable amount of headroom as well. It's pretty nice in here. It's only two seats. There's no centre seat in this particular spec. You've got a nice little drinks holder down there. I could sit in here and go on a nice motorway blast, or have my head blown by the acceleration this thing has. We'll get to that. Let's jump in the front and talk about the rocket ship that is, honestly, the displays, the cockpit of this car are just next level. If I can get my legs out, that is, just about. It's really very special in here. And the car knows I'm in with my key and has turned itself on. It's very Porsche in here. There are design nods to Porsche design language everywhere. There's the steering wheel and the Porsche crest in the centre of that for obvious things, but there's the Sport Chrono dial in the middle of the dash, and the main TFT has a bit of a nod to 911. There aren't the 5 dials, but there are kind of 2 dials, and then this beautiful, beautiful TFT virtual cockpit-esque display. Everything is touchscreen in here, and if you don't like that, you're not going to like this car at all. I think the only real buttons I've found are the ones that do the windows and the door mirrors are down here, and your presets for your seat, and that's about it. Everything else is touchscreen. The gear selector is just here. It's straight out of a 911, 992, with the park brake next to it, so that's kind of takes a little bit of getting used to. And then the main controls, I must say, I've not had the car for very long, but there is so much information there. You could literally sit in this car for a couple of hours and just go through all the menus and all the options. And that's great, but it's a car I think you really need to learn. There is the option of, on this bottom display here, having a touch screen, so you can just basically rest your hand here and use your finger as a touch screen, almost like a kind of stylus, to control the different menus, so you don't have to go through here. Sometimes I find myself when I'm driving, maybe it's an age thing, I kind of rest my fingers on top of the dash and then use my thumb so I can then kind of balance it and make sure I hit the right button rather than kind of doing this game. Driving position, it's a Porsche. It's so easy to get into a nice driving position. In fact, these memory seats are probably a little bit far forward for me, so that's probably a little bit nicer. The steering wheel feels lovely, and all in all, the visibility is utterly, utterly excellent. But there's so much to talk about, and one of the things that we need to start to go through are the different settings in terms of drive mode, and the best place to do that is to take this car for a drive, even though the weather is absolutely atrocious today. Now then, before we get started with the driving, very briefly, we obviously need to talk about charging. When I got home last night, having driven the car back, I had 65% of my battery charge left. I'm now currently at 100% battery charge, or 99%. And I did that using a 3-pin granny charger connected to a normal power socket, because I don't have a charger at home. I don't think that's too bad actually, but we'll talk more about charging as we get going. But that 100% battery charge gives me a range indicated of 205 miles, which I know isn't something, I don't know, if you looked at Tesla they'll quote over 300 miles, but I don't think that's too bad. And by all accounts, that's pretty accurate in terms of what I'm going to get. Clearly, it depends on how heavy my right foot is, but that's where we're starting. And for me, that's the start point of this video. 75 to 80% of charging that people are going to do in one of these is going to be at home, and they're going to get in the car like me right now with a full battery charge and about 200 miles of range every single day. So this car has a 93.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that's what gives it this 200 mile range. And clearly, any review that you ever watch on electric cars, or when anybody talks about electric cars, they always talk about range anxiety. So for the first mode we're going to talk about is range mode. Now interestingly, range mode is not probably one that Porsche would recommend I use on a road like this. Range mode is aimed at things like cruising on a motorway or dual carriageway. And what happens in range mode is the car makes itself as slippery as possible. It's got active aero on the front air dam that makes it as aerodynamic as it can. It squats down on the suspension, and it basically makes itself as slippery as possible. And that is a brilliant way to drive when you are on a dual carriageway. The other thing in range mode, interestingly, is it doesn't really have any regenerative braking, although there is a button on the steering wheel for me to turn the regenerative braking on. Now this car has 2 gears. I know most electric cars only have a single gear, but they're actually 2 gears. So there's motors on the front axle and motors on the rear axle, but the rear axle has 2 different speeds. And range and normal mode don't engage the first of those 2 speeds, so you're only ever, if you like, in second gear. And that's going to mean that outright acceleration and performance is going to be pared back a little bit when you're in range or normal mode. But it's still a mighty quick car. Honestly, this car redefines the word quick. Let's have a chat about charging. I want to get all of the kind of range anxiety charging stuff out of the way, because I think there's a really, really good story to be told here. it's a 90 kilowatt hour battery pack. I've already mentioned I managed to get 65% to 100% charge overnight on a granny charger, and they're only at just over a couple of kilowatts. So if you had a home charger box installed, 7 or 11 kilowatt charger box, depending on what you're able to in your home, then you're looking at a 0 to 100% charge time of something like 9 to 10 hours. So that's definitely, come home at night, plug the car in, wake up the next morning, full battery, even if you plugged it in and it only had like 5% charge. However, that's not the way that you want to run an EV. Really, what you want to run is in between 20 and 80%, because that's where your charging time and charging efficiency is the most efficient between 20 and 80% of battery. The first 20% and the last 20% are always the ones that take the longest amount of time. So if you're charging in public, you probably want to hook up to a charger before you get to 20% battery, or less than 20%, and only charge up to 80%. So if you went to a 50 kilowatt charger, interestingly, Porsche quote from 5% to 80% charge in about 93 minutes. So what's that, an hour and a half, which isn't too bad. But I reckon if you went there before you got down as low as 5, you could probably get that down to maybe an hour and 10 minutes. And I think that at a 50 kilowatt charger stop, bearing in mind there's lots and lots of those out there now, that isn't too bad. That's time to have a break, have a coffee and so on, and then come back to the car, 80% charge, off you go. However, this car can deal with significantly faster charging than that, which is what makes it so interesting for me. Because this car, if you plug into a 270 kilowatt DC charger, you can get 5 to 80% charge in just a smidge over 20 minutes. And that's the interesting thing. The question is, how much does the charging cost, and how many of those 270 kilowatt chargers are there out there really?
Firstly, every Porsche centre will be able to offer a customer charging solution, the level of which will depend on the site cabling. By the start of 2021, around 2/3 of their 43 dealer network will have some form of high power charging. There are already 5 dealers with fully commissioned 350 kilowatt chargers. Owners access and pay for that, along with over 100,000 public charge points, via a single charging card that comes with the Taycan, rather than a shed load of apps and contactless cards that has been the case up till now. Next year, this will evolve to an electronic handshake with the charger as you plug the car in. Ionity currently have 11 locations in the UK with 270 kilowatt chargers, with rapid expansions planned for next year. Now, Ionity is hideously expensive, 70 pence per kilowatt, or £65 for a full charge of this car. There are a range of different payment plans, but Porsche customers will pay just 30 pence per kilowatt hour to use Ionity.
So I think the news on the charging front is very positive. I still think manufacturers have a long way to go to match Tesla and their infrastructure, and the fact that they own their infrastructure, the way it's integrated with the sat-nav, the number of charging stations you have. However, progress continues at pace, and I really like Porsche's approach, and they know it's critical to them selling lots of these to get the charging infrastructure right. But we've got a nice bit of road. I'm going to put it into sport mode, and then we'll just crack on. Now, this car is really quick, 625 horsepower, but it's the torque, 850 Newton meters of torque, and that is instant torque from 0 RPM. It's quite sensational. However, the downside is this car weighs 2.3 tons. That's pretty much a ton more than a 911. Can you drive an electric car through a puddle? Yeah, it looks like you can. So it's a very heavy car. Clearly the weight distribution, all the batteries are nice and low down. But when you first get in the car, it doesn't feel that heavy. The steering is a lovely feel to it. It's a very Porsche feeling steering. The thing you have to start really getting used to is there's no gears. So it's just this smooth progression, this mind-bending acceleration. And what often happens with a really quick electric vehicle is that it's got super quick acceleration early on. The mid-range is great, and then it kind of winds itself out. It kind of runs out of steam. This doesn't. On the public highway, it just keeps going. It is sensational. But the feel, the poise, the steering setup, the suspension setup is really very impressive, and you don't get a feeling that you're driving such a heavy car. What you do get is the feeling you're driving an unbelievably, relentlessly fast car. 0 to 60, you dispatch that in the turbo in just 3.2 seconds. I think we might have to try that very shortly. Because when you engage launch control, the power figure goes from 625 bhp to 670 for that launch control phase. But yes, when you get it on a nice bit of road like this, it's great. However, there is one thing missing, and that is noise. It's an electric car. There's wind noise and there's a whine every now and again. But what you can do, and when I heard about this, I thought this sounded really cheesy, is it's got an electronic noise generator. So let's turn that on, and hopefully we'll get a nice clear run up my favourite bit of road, and you'll be able to hear it. And it kind of just adds this drama and this theatre under acceleration. Hopefully the camera will pick it up. Here we go. It's weird. It just adds to the drama, and what I love about it is they haven't tried to recreate a V8 or something. They've created this new sound. Oh my god, the mid-range in this car. Now, today is a terrible day for traction. Four-wheel drive though, the power you got coming out of corners is unearthly. And that noise, the noise generator is brilliant. There's a little bit on the outside of the car as well. But it just adds to the drama, and I love it because they've not tried to make it sound like an internal combustion engine. They've given it a new noise, a new sound. It's space age. It's like something out of a science fiction movie, and I absolutely love it. It works, and I really didn't think it would work. The next thing to talk about is the elephant in the room, and that is how much this car costs. And unfortunately, instantly it rules this car out for me as an owner, because it's just too expensive. And I am someone who is about to go electric. We are going to buy an electric car next year.
The Taycan Turbo starts at £116,000. This press car is nicely loaded with lots of options, the most notable and expensive being ceramic brakes at £4,200, dynamic chassis control sport at £2,300, 21-inch Mission E design wheels at £2,300, and the Burmester Hi-Fi at £3,245, making a total on-the-road price of £139,252. The 4S starts from £83,500 and the Turbo S from £138,800.
It sounds like you're driving a spaceship. Okay, I'm going to put it into Sport Plus, and I'm going to try launch control. It's the same with most cars. All you need to do to engage launch control is left foot hard on the brake, right foot all the way to the floor on the throttle. Launch control will engage, and then take a brave pill and drop your foot off of the brake and hold on tight. It is quite dramatic. So let me find a suitable straight bit of national speed limit road. Okay, here we go. Go! Oh, 60, wow. Oh my God. Wow, you can feel the car gripping, just you can feel the wheels I mean, it's a soaking wet day today. That is utterly astonishing. Now then, if you were to want to go for the Turbo S, then you can tap into 760 PS, but only at launch control. That's the only party piece, really. Everything else about the cars is the same, and that's a lot. It's 25 grand pretty much between this and the Turbo S, similarly spec'd, because the Turbo S starts from 138 and the car we're sat in with a lot of spec on it is 138. And I can imagine it's amazing, and it's amazing boasting rights down the pub. However, I really don't think it's worth that extra money just to get that bit of boasting rights. But launch control in this car in the wet, I would love to try it in the dry. Oh my goodness me, that would be something else. The 0 to 60 may well be impressive, but actually for me it's the mid-range in this car. So we're doing 40 miles an hour. Let's do 40 to 60. Ready? 60. I mean, it literally is. And what about 30 to 60? Right, 30 miles an hour. 60. You can hear the gear change as well. It's only imperceptible, and it's that noise that augments it. But the mid-range acceleration in this car is off the scale. I just love that noise. So what are my final impressions of the Porsche Taycan? It's a very expensive car, and there's no denying that it's out of the reach of the vast majority of people, and that's such a shame, because it is a very competent car. It just drives so well, and the performance, arguably it's got too much performance for everyday use. It is a phenomenal thing, absolutely phenomenal thing. I cannot think of a car that could take 4 adult passengers and get faster down a bit of road than this. It is utterly breathtaking, and it's the power delivery. The instant torque is savaged everywhere, and it just keeps on pulling and pulling and pulling. You know, the car's got a top speed of just over 160 miles an hour if you've got the roads to do it, and it's incredible. I think Porsche's approach to charging, clearly the super fast chargers will get more and more common. The 270 kilowatt chargers are only 11 in the country at the moment, so if you live near one of them, brilliant. But as I said at the beginning, most people will start the day having charged overnight on a home charge box with a full battery. Most journey profiles, you know, 50 to 70 miles each way. Happily, you could do that in this car with no range anxiety whatsoever. If you were doing a longer journey, it will take some planning. But again, talking to Porsche, they're working so hard on the integration of the sat-nav and the charging network, and some of the things that they've got coming next year just sound really exciting, and that for me gives me hope. It gives me hope that a brand like Porsche, traditional, dominated by high power sports cars, combustion engine sports cars, can come into the EV market with a car like this.
How can I help you?
I don't want to talk to you. That's what that really annoys me. Whenever you say the word Porsche in the car, she comes up and wants to know what she wants to help you with. I don't want any help. It's only a minor problem. Keep calm, Peter. Keep calm. But yeah, it's a sensational car, and I'm really excited to see, you know, other cars as Porsche's EV fleet increases. It's done it again. Don't use the P word in a car, because otherwise she comes up and wants to know what to talk about. And it's very exciting for me. Bring out a hot wagon, one of these though, please. And actually, here's the thing. Yes, this car, 130 odd grand as spec'd, 115 grand list, but buy the 4S. Seriously? The 4S from, you know, mid-80s, put a bit of spec on it, 90 odd grand. You know, that's Model X Tesla money. This car's built massively better than any Tesla, and that's the car for me. It's still ridiculously capable, ridiculously powerful, and I think that's the thinking man's car. If you want the extra performance, then this car is sensational. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that one. I certainly have. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come as we get some national speed limit. Anyway, I'll see you on the next film, guys. You take care. Drive safe.